there's no way. I'm already so still burning. So hold to me close. Now baby, I do what I'm told. Still learning to take my chances, to take my time, to keep on dancing, to walk that line, yeah. You got me shifting the paradigm. No longer wishing, you're my lucky strike. Love the way you ride. Look into my eyes, say you're ready to go. $1 million life, yeah. We could roll the dice. Act like you're surprised, but you already know. Oh yeah, got lucky overnight. Jackpot when I got the invite. Let me wrap my arms around you, 'cause I can't go home without you. And my heart just vibe with you, babe. Wanna go sky high with you, babe. Gotta bring you close to tell you that you're my lucky strike. And I got to tell you, if you didn't know, then I got to tell you that you're my lucky strike. And I got to tell you, if you didn't know, then I got to tell you that you're my lucky strike. Cooler than cold, I'm all in. So load up the dice, so heavy. The way that you roll, I'm falling. So I never fall. I'm ready to take my chances, to take my time, to keep on dancing, to walk that line, yeah. You got me shifting the paradigm. No longer wishing. Don't
This is hello everyone. I'm sorry, my other mic was muted. So this is we're not actually starting the episode. We're just here live on YouTube. Just wanted to kind of explain what's going on tonight. Our guest fell through, so we have a pre-recorded interview that we're going to stitch into this live segment that we're going to record right now. But then as a special treat for those of you who showed up and endured that, we're going to do a strategy episode following that, probably looking over a hand that I think will be kind of fun to look at. So sort of 2 episodes. One will be very short. We will do the food bank raffle during the first episode, and we'll get going very shortly. You kind of get a little picture about how the sausage is made here. So I'm going to set us up to record. John, if you want to hit the music when I do, I think away we'll go. Well, folks, you know you're in for a treat when you hear that tune, because it's time for another episode of the RecPoker podcast. I am Chris Jones. This is your Chats edition. I'm filling in for Jim Reed, who is finally, I think, going to be back home from his big trip to Ireland. I hope we can catch up with him a little bit about that next week, because I think that sounded like a blast that people had over there, and I was very jealous hearing all the updates as we did. But this week we are recording. We have an interview with Chris Reed, so we'll be talking to Chris shortly. But before we do, I want to remind everyone that it takes more than just your host to produce everything we do at RecPoker. RecPoker is mostly a volunteer-based organization, but we do what we do because you're able to sometimes contribute to us as premium members. We also have a sponsor, our Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. And then we have the illustrious Wrecking Crew who help make the magic happen at RecPoker. So I would invite our wrecking crew to introduce themselves. Usually starts with me. So starting with whoever's first in order. John.
Joe.
Joe.
I'll go. My name is Joe Coolis. You can find me at Joe Cool PhD on Blue Sky as well as Twitter. And I'm LV 11 in the home game. And my responsibility is to run the PsyOps workshops on the third Thursday of every month, where we delve into the psychological concepts that drive your poker game and sometimes push you in directions that you didn't realize.
And I'm John Somsky, also known as Poker Geek MN everywhere. And it's an interesting fact that Joe, in fact, alphabetically comes before John, but Joseph comes alphabetically after John. Hence Chris's confusion.
See? Yeah. Thank you.
Anyway,
Thank you.
I help organize our home games.
It's a PsyOps to keep everybody on their toes.
And now would be
I'm
someone
Keith
who
Brent.
is muted.
Yeah. I'm Keith Brent. That's Monkey System Online, and definitely after the alphabet of both of these fine gentlemen. And I run the Monkeys Off Table Tools segment every month. In Monkeys Off Table Tools, we use various study tools like GTO Wizard and et cetera, basically advanced poker training to study poker and have some fun smashing computer bots.
And I'm Rob Washam, and I'm Rabman50 just about everywhere. And I host a book study on the first and third Wednesdays of every month.
And one of the people who's not here, because she was over in Ireland as well, is Kim Kilroy. She runs our hand history review, but she also runs an occasional poker empowerment group where she is finding some of the kind of maybe some of the lesser known and some of the more well known women in poker and doing interviews with them and talking strategy with them. And one of those episodes was with Chris Reed, and that's what we're going to be playing for you in just a moment. So that'll be the interview that you'll be hearing, and then we'll return and we'll go over some home game results and talk about some things coming up at Running Aces. So, but tune in for the interview right now. All right, we're back. So if you want to learn more about the Poker Empowerment Group at RecPoker or some of the other things that we do in that space, please check out the Wrecking Crew page or the Poker Empowerment page. But I'm really grateful to Kim for doing this interview series, and it was great to hear from Chris Reed there. For those of you in the chat right now, go ahead and get your food bank entries into the chat. Start entering those food bank entries. You will be gathering those names up as we close out the episode. But for now, John, I was going to turn it over to you and see if you can tell us about the home game results.
Well, of course I can tell us about the home game results. On April 3rd, we had our No Limit Hold'em Championship Series. This is a series where we keep track of points every month, have one tournament a month, and your top 10 scores count towards the Player of the Year points race, and you earn a bronze pin if you win that Player of the Year points race. Spot Conlon, Daniel Kennedy won the No Limit Hold'em event, the first one this year, and El Tahoe has taken the lead in the points race for that. He, I think, got third place or something like that this last month.
Well, congrats to both of them. Particularly, you know, that's a name I'm not that familiar with. So congratulations to that, and congratulations to Spot Conlon, Daniel Kennedy, who was, I think, rightfully annoyed that nobody remembered that he was the solo gold pin winner in RecPoker. Well, I guess Rob did remember, but yes, most of the panel had forgotten or at least been remiss in recognizing the great Daniel Kennedy and his gold pin.
Well, in my defense, I cannot possibly remember every win that I report on because,
True.
there are hundreds of them, although only one gold pin winner, so you'd think maybe I would, but
Right.
Well, to give you a break there, John, the only reason I remember is because Daniel and I were talking poker before there was a rec poker. So I've known Daniel for a long, long, long time. So when he won it, it was a significant event in my memory. Otherwise, I would have never remembered.
Well,
I think that if you go to PsyOps's most recent episode, Keith can attribute the fact that that is actually something we talked about the difficulties when there are similar patterns of memory of being able to pick one out and be able to say, oh, this is the one that it is. And so it takes certain stimuli to come in to activate that pattern in order to recall it successfully. So, John, your brain is just like everybody else's, and you're allowed to make those mistakes periodically with apologies to Spock Hoffman.
saying my brain like
Yeah.
everybody else's, I don't think I've ever been so insulted in my life.
I feel like we just got a doctor's note that sort of excused our behavior there.
Yeah.
So like I'm taking it. I'm running with it.
I got a stamp saying it's okay to be an idiot.
Yeah.
But that does bring up a good point that the Go for the Gold tournament is going to be on April 17th, the third Wednesday of the month. So anyone who has ever won a silver pin, however you won it, if you have a silver pin, you get to play in the Gold tournament. There's only 44 people who have actually qualified for that. And tonight, there could be one more, depending upon whether we get a repeat winner or a new winner for the Tournament of Champions series tonight.
And your name will ring in the annals of history for forever and ever and ever.
Yes. And no one will ever forget your accomplishment or know how to forget that you were the second Go for the Gold winner.
Yes,
ever.
Exactly.
Okay, then on our nightly series, April 1st, Trey 371, Thomas Pena got his first international victory, or his first nightly victory, not international, sorry, nightly victory. A Really Mad Guy got his second nightly victory for the year. Now you said it, Joe got his fourth international victory for the year. And Keck Geek 65, who is currently private, even though that is Keck Geek Jr., and I think most people already know his name, got his first international victory for the year. And then John Lancer won the LPP event, so he can contact info at rec.poker for his free month at Learn Pro Poker.
All right. Well, I'm seeing we have a couple names in the food bank raffle here. So I've pulled out my trusty boxcar, and I think we'll just go 1 through 3 for the RRCC and 4 through 6 for Evil Roy. If that sounds good to everyone. All right. We're going to have to base it on trust because I'm not going to pull up my camera and do all this. So it is a 5, which means Evil Roy Slade can be, you can contact info at rec.poker to claim your prize. And I think we had one in particular, but you'll find out when you contact us.
So you're saying there must be some sort of prize. You're just not sure what it is.
Prize.
Hosts often say things like that.
Yeah,
That's how hosts
they kind of throw these things off.
Yeah.
So with that, does anyone have anything else they want to add to this week's episode? No? All right. Well, with that, I want to say one last thing. MSPT coming up at Running Aces, April 18th through 28th. This is a big deal. This is one of the biggest tournaments in Minnesota that you can play. Big prizes. People travel here. It's a great event. They run it well. So come on down, give it a shot. And they've got, if 1100 is too much out of your buy-in range, they have smaller events throughout the week. They've got a mystery bounty. They've got a tag team game. They've got a number of different offerings. plus satellites, and they're doing the milestone satellites. So those are a great deal too. So come on down, check it out. We'll see you at Running Aces, April 18th through 28th. And with that, I want to thank John, Joe, Rob, Keith, all the listeners who make the magic happen. And Running Aces Hotel Racetrack and Casino, and everyone else who tuned in tonight. Thanks for tuning in. If you're just tuning in right now, we're going to go to a strategy episode in just a second. All right, cool. I'm stop recording. Woo! I don't know how to run these ones when we're doing the fake interview. All right.
You did fine.
I do have a hand for us that we're going to jump into. And those of you I recognize we're still live. So those of you who are watching, I do know that. If you're just tuning in now, we had our guest fall through. So we had a pre-recorded episode that we're stitching the beginning, the middle, and the end in. And now we're going to go do a forums episode. And I am going to... you know what, John?
Yep.
I am going to steal the share back from you.
Okay.
And I'm going to do the music. So let me pull that up. Podcast. There it is. Music. All right, and let me share audio. I gotta remember what I'm doing, but okay. Can you hear this? Awesome. All right. Let me get us recording. Well, welcome everyone. This is the forums edition of the RecPoker podcast. I am Chris Jones, filling in for your host Jim Reed, and I am 5x5 in the home game and 5b5 on Twitter and pretty much everywhere else. Tonight we're going to go over a kind of an interesting hand. I'm going to give you a little bit of background of it. I'm going to share my screen and share a little bit about this hand. But before I do, I want to make sure to thank our sponsor, the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, and remind our listeners that I think before this episode airs that the MSPT is coming up April 18th through 28th. So go check them out. That's a really fantastic event that they have there. But before we can get into the meat of this episode, we have to talk about the people who make the magic happen at RecPoker, and that is the Wrecking Crew. We are a mostly volunteer-based organization, and we couldn't do it without the folks who show up each and every week and make the magic happen. And I'd like you to meet a few of them now.
My name is Joe Coolis. You can find me at Joe Cool PhD, cool with a K, on Blue Sky and Twitter, and LVD11 in the home game.
And I'm John Somsky, also known as Poker Geek MN everywhere.
And I'm Keith Brandt. That's a Monkey System, just about everywhere. And I run Monkey's Off-Table Tools every month.
And I'm Rob Washam, called Rabman50, just about everywhere. And on the first and third Wednesdays of each month, I host a book study.
Well, and so I want to kind of give you some framework for. I've been kind of slowly working my way through, and I recognize that this is a very high roller event, and not the kind of fields that we play in, but it is the kind of situations that we sometimes find ourselves in. And I thought this was a very interesting hand. I've been sort of kind of slowly plugging my way through the Triton, one of the Triton tournaments. It's a 150K buy-in, so nosebleed stakes, best players in the world. But I find this situation to be one of those where that comes up a lot. It has a lot of implications, and there can be very tricky spots to play. So I'm going to share my screen because I recorded, or I got the whole thing going. Recorded all the ins and outs here. Can you see all that?
Got it.
Okay, got it. All right. So here we are. I want you to. There are 17 left in this tournament. The Can you see that notepad? No. Okay. Well, there are. We have already made the money in this tournament. The next, we've paid 150,000 to buy in. The next payout is 254,000, and for 16th, so the next person knocks out gets a really small. I mean, small, $13,000 pay jump to 267,000, and first place gets 4.2 million. So that's why 13,000 is small only in this kind of relative space. But so we've made the money. Congratulations to us. This is that sort of part of the tournament where I think it's sort of hard to play when you've got these sort of like middling stacks and you're above some players left, right? There's you can see at this table there's a couple 11 big blind hands. So we're third in chips at this table. At other tables there are some less than 10 big blind players. But we're a long ways away from the quote unquote big money. I mean, if we want to, maybe we just knock off 3 zeros of this and just say this is a $150 tournament and we've made 254, but we could be making, a lot more at the top. And so I want to talk about a little bit about how we approach this. We get a couple of folds here. The overwhelming chip leader here, min opens to 100K, and it folds to us in the big blind with Queen Jack offsuit. And I want to just even start here with what is your thoughts in this spot?
Most likely, I would think that the chip leader would be min opening with a very wide range. So our hand of Queen Jack offsuit should be ahead of that range. Of course, we're going to be playing out of position for the entire hand. So it feels like a hand we need to play, but a position I hate to be in.
I remember watching some of the Winamax streams that they have, where they talk out their strategies. And a lot of times when you're really short stacked in the big blind, if it only costs you one more big blind to see a flop, it is sometimes worth it. Because if you happen to hit something big, you can maybe improve your stack. And if you don't hit anything big, it's an easy get rid of, especially out of position. So since you're the last person to act, I think this is a call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, are most people approaching this with a call? I did realize I didn't have the screen. I don't know. It doesn't share when I do the Zoom share, so I had to share it. So anyway, I fixed it all. But hopefully our audience can see that now. Are most people playing this through a call?
Yeah, I don't see what. I mean, you could raise, but you're going to get yourself into trouble. You don't have that many big blinds left behind. It's better to see what you can do with some care, because you could end up with a lot of top pair hands that are already beat or dominated fairly significantly. So it's a call, but it's a cautious call. Not seeing it as strong with a top pair hand.
Yeah.
Okay. If there were a little bit more, if he had like 3x'd it instead of min opened, I might be I might want to shove because having a sub 20 big blind stack is a good reshoving stack size, but to the min open, and there's other small, yeah, I think call is probably the better route at this point.
Yeah,
Would you shove, John? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
yeah, with a queen jack offsuit like this, if we shove, is that a value shove or is that a bluff? If we're bluffing, what are we folding out? Are we folding out anything that dominates us, like king jack or king queen or king jack? I don't think so. So,
Yeah,
uh,
it is mostly a bluff, but it's
yeah,
also just designed to seal up all. I mean, you're going to take it down almost all of the time,
yeah,
and the opener should have such a wide range. You're going to be ahead most of the time
yeah.
too.
And if they can be opening like king 9, king 10, I mean, I think we can probably get some things to fold. Even weak aces probably are going to be folding this, so I think we can get some things worse than this to fold. But I kind of think that this is just too nice of a hand to like just to shove in this spot.
Yeah, I agree. This is in between. There's there isn't much worse than this that's going to call, and there isn't much better than this that's going to fold. We don't have a raise here. It's like one of those in between things where we can call. I mean, we're getting a good price. We're only going to go down from 17 to 16 or from 18 to 17 bigs. We're still going to have the rejam weapon
Yep.
at our disposal.
Yep.
So, I mean, this looks like a call to me, and who knows, maybe we can flop real nice.
Yep. All right.
If we do pair the flop with either the queen or the jack, are we just going to go with it?
Well, that's a good foreshadowing question, Keith. So Santosh elects to call here, and he hits a queen on a queen 9 deuce all club board. And we've got the jack of clubs in our hand too, which I think is an interesting card in this spot as well. I don't think there's any I mean, we can't really lead in this spot. I don't think ever. So I think that's pretty uncontroversial that Santos checks, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to advocate for that, right? Okay. So he does check. It goes to our chip leader who bets one big blind, or we're at the 50K, so one big blind and a little extra mustard on top. And now it's back to us.
I'm ripping it in.
I wouldn't get it in. I would raise. I would raise small, like 3.
Okay. So we've got a rip, we've got a small raise. Anyone want to advocate for a call? Or a fold?
I mean, the reason I might call is just simply because of ICM factors. You have 2 small stacks behind, and if you can squeeze out and not hit it, I mean, you're really concerned about an ace or a king, right? Mm-hmm. As being your biggest concerns here. If he's got a set of 9s, you're dead anyway, probably. So I think there is some reasonableness to say, well, if I double my stack, I'm still not really getting into the top 3, and then I lose the chance if I bust out of that ladder up, which is coming up. So it's kind of passive though, and I understand why everybody else is advocating the jam, but I do think there is a small case for a call.
I think it's player dependent, because there are some players that I would expect to continue to put pressure on. The things going against that is it's a monotone flop. So someone calling here looks scary. So if your opponent has a single club, they're likely to raise on a semi bluff, or you might not get any more action either. So it really is, in my opinion, player dependent. I have no idea what Wang Yi would be doing here, or any player who plays at this level
Right.
for that
Right.
matter.
Fair. So, I mean, I'm already like, I'm really loving this conversation because I'm already seeing like a pretty wide divergence in terms of like, maybe we should call, maybe we should raise small, maybe we should go for it all. And just kind of push our equity. We got the jack of clubs. Let's just shove, get it in. We've got top pair. Um, and I think that's why these spots I think are so challenging, because once we come along in the big blind and we're out of position, it's really hard to know how to approach these spots. I think if this is not a monotone flop, there's maybe some different potential approaches here. But I think this becomes sort of challenging because when we do shove here, I mean, we can. There's a decent amount in our opponent's range that is just going to fold and we're going to take it down. But I don't think if we ever get called, we're just in dire shape. I think. So I don't know.
Does anybody call without ace or king of clubs in your hand in this if you shove it in? I can't imagine I would. I'd probably go away, and
Yeah.
those are the two cards we're most worried about because we're pretty much drawing dead at that point.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I could see a set continuing or calling.
Okay. Queens are calling. Any queen is calling too.
Well, our hero takes the Rob Washam route and raises to about 3 and a bit big blinds here with this holding, and gets called by our chip leader. And the turn is the King of Hearts. Joe, you were trying to avoid the kings and the aces. Now that one has come.
I mean, King X, I don't think survives. It's I think it. I'm most scared of the King of Clubs now because there's just nothing that I can even draw out at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be better if it was the King of Clubs on the board because that would eliminate the hands.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a shutdown at this point. Personally, but
yeah, is it? I mean, are you mostly checking here? Is everyone mostly checking now? We've taken this aggressive action. Ben called, seen a card that comes an overcard to our queen. Anybody want to advocate for a bet here?
No, I think you need to check. This is Joe mentioned it before. It's an ICM spot. So if you're going to bet small, you check. I mean, if you're going to jam, you should have just jammed on the flop, and we didn't do that, and so it's a little late now to jam. So I think it's a check, 100% check.
Agreed.
Santosh agrees as well. And maybe surprisingly, our opponent checks as well. Maybe not surprisingly. I don't know. So now it comes to a river, which is the 5 of diamonds. And after our opponent checks here, I think this is where this hand is sort of interesting. I mean, I think this is interesting all the way. But what are your thoughts here? I mean, is this a check? Is this a bet small? Is this something else?
Against an opponent that I'm not, so I think it's highly likely that we have the best hand at this point, unless our opponent had a king and now they think they might have top pair, and then so they let off the break, right? Every other hand that the opponent might have had, we would either likely be ahead or they would have bet again, unless they've already got the flush. In which case, we're maybe drawing dead.
Yeah, with the
So
SPR being at 1, I mean, he could have easily just taken the street off, knowing that he had the best hand, hoping to get action on the river.
yeah,
I think the
Um,
only. Oh, sorry, John. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'd be inclined to make a small value bet in the tournaments that I play in, because the opponents are typically passive and they aren't willing to be patient to wait to the river to get their money.
Yeah, I like that
I
thinking.
don't know that would be an appropriate play in a Triton.
Right.
I guess my question is, well, what's the value target? So Queen 10, I guess, Queen 8, or some sort of other, Queen X hand that played along. You're dead to any King X hand. That gives you a lot of combos that have you beat. I guess 9X could stay, but is 9X calling a bet, given 2 overcards in this situation? I just think there's a lot of combos that you're losing to fairly, and you're just kind of shaving your stack down. And what do you do if you raise it? I guess you fold, but then you just kind of loan some of those big blinds that you might want to use later to survive against the 2 other stacks. So I just think collect your equity here. You've got second pair on a board that has a flush draw that came in. Because there's just so many. Any bigger queen has got you beat as well. And those people are just simply going to call. They're not going to fold to a small bet. So I would just collect my equity in this spot.
So you would check and check with the intention of folding to any bet, or check with the intention of calling to some sizings, or what's your plan when you check here?
It would have to be a very small bet.
Okay.
Right, very small. Anything larger, and I think the ICM pressure suggests that collecting the 5 big blinds is not worth it to to really put yourself in a tight spot. Because if he does 5 big blinds, you've got 9 left. If he does 7 big blinds, that's half your stack. And you really shouldn't call a 7 big blind. So I just think that there are better ways of playing a passively. Just call something small, and live to fight another day if you go another way. Right?
All right. So who's team bet and who's team check? Who's team bet? Oh, nobody. So we're all team check.
I'm team check call.
Team check call. Okay.
Are we going to check call the jam?
Yeah.
I would.
Kim would.
Yeah, I think you have to.
So
There's just so much bluffing that he can do here that it's just how do you not call it? Call it off.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with Kim.
I'm not calling a jam. I'm gonna wait for the next hand.
Gonna wait for the next hand. Okay. John?
I prefer
Kim?
like check call to like bet and then have to face a raise and then call off. I would prefer having kept all his bluffs in by checking.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's probably what I would do. Most likely. And I'd call anything.
You
I
call
could-
anything, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'd call the shove.
Well, Santosh takes the path less chosen here and bets pretty small. Kind of three big blinds into a pot of 13. And which it sounds like none of us really are that enthusiastic about this play. But if you did this, what is your plan when this happens?
Well, if we were going to call a jam anyway, we might as well just do that. Because he's just putting pressure on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. If I was gonna make such a small bet, I mean, with this vulnerable of a hand, the only reason I would do it is if I really thought I was going to induce something and I'd still be ahead. But most likely I'd end up folding if I made that small of a bet in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
If I was going to bet, I wouldn't have made that small of a bet to make the decision to call easier. Or then I'd fold it for this size.
Right.
I
But
think
I
if
think-
you're going to
I
bet
think when
this
you-
small, you should fold.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. When you make a blocker bet, that's a blocker bet. When they go do
Yep.
this, then you're folding.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. That's exactly the way I would have played it. If I bet, I would fold to this jam.
Yep. Okay.
I guess the question for me, and you know, I'd love to hear kind of explanations about it, is when you bet small, it's not that different from checking, right? So why in a bet small, particularly when he has such a chip advantage over you, does this become a fold in the face of the jam in comparison to if you check and then he jams, then you call it? Because both of them could have the same number of bluffs in play. And, you know, I can't imagine that if I'm confused about that line, why others might not be confused about, because it's essentially the same play. It's like we get to the jam, but because of our action, we make a decision to call all of our chips off. Does that make sense?
Yeah, except for jamming against us a bet is not the same as jamming into an unopened pot. Right? The jam over us is a much stronger play than a jam into a checked pot.
Right.
So while all the chips are getting in the end, it's not the same play. Now, whether or not it's different enough to warrant a different action, that's arguable. But you know, it's not the same thing.
Yeah, I kind of think like if Wang Yi, let's say Wang Yi opened, I don't know what could they, King 8,
King 10,
with the King of Clubs, something like that, King 10 maybe. Yeah, that's another good example. Those are the kinds of hands that would be kind of foolish to jam here rather than just call, I think. Right? So that's the slight difference there, is that like the value that Wang Yi is shoving here is stronger. It's a more polarized move, and that's the kind of the purpose of a blocker bet, right? Is it takes out that middling part of the range that has just like that might win, might lose, and it's just going to call. I mean, I can see him do it. You know, Queen 10 probably does the same thing. Probably just calls that small bet. So that I think is the difference. Is it takes out that middle part of the range that may find some more spicy action in if we just check the river again. I'm seeing some stuff in our YouTube chat. So Evil Roy was advocating for shoves pretty much at every street. He's got a bunch of chats that say shove, shove, shove. So pretty much every street he was advocating for a shove. Taylor Wynn is advocating for a check call on this river line. And then Evil Roy says the shove was to avoid this spot with 1-1 while we were likely ahead with top pair and worse flush draw, or behind with pair and a better flush draw. So, again, a lot of people sort of advocating, I think, or at least Evil Roy's advocating for shoves. Not a lot of sort of enthusiasm for this small bet, blocker bet play. And I will tell... go ahead, Kim.
Sorry, I was just going to say, can we put him on enough bluffs to make this call, given the price that we're being laid here? So
Yeah.
that's what we have to think.
That's what I want to ask now. So let me just tell you what happens. Santosh folds. Okay. What do you think are what's Wang Yi's? I mean, Wang Yi's value is, flushes and maybe king queen, maybe kings queens, some of the sets, things like that. But where does the value? What's the bottom of the value here that makes this play? And then what are the bluffs? I think that's even the more interesting question.
Probably the bottom of the value would be king 10 with the king of clubs. I don't know what other value he could be doing that with. That's less than a pair of kings.
Mm-hmm.
And a
I think
blocker
that
to
might
the
just call though.
flop.
I think that king 10 might just call here. Because we can turn up with two pairs and we can turn up with some other stuff that.
Oh yeah, I agree, but at the same
So I don't
time,
think it raises with that.
okay, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my personal take is that the bottom of probably the value range is maybe queen 9. Maybe. But I think that probably bets, so then it's probably like king 9. I don't know, but don't those bet the turn? This is where I start to get lost in this hand. Like, where is the bottom of our value range that checks back the turn? I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't think he has any value. I think he has a huge stack, and he's playing on the passivity of Santos so far.
Mm-hmm.
The flush didn't come in on the river, so he's going to say, okay, you didn't get your flush. I'm going after you now.
There's some comments in the chat. Ace 10 with the ace of clubs is a potential, probably bluff line here. Taylor says blocker bets can induce the missed flush draws to go for it. So those single club holdings, if Wang Yi has like the ace of clubs or the king of clubs, well, the king of clubs is kind of weird because it's got top pair, but ace of clubs X can maybe show up here as some good bluffs.
Yep.
What ace of clubs does he have though? Like he doesn't have, like we're blocking a lot of the ace of club.
Yep.
Yeah, but keep in mind, he started this whole thing with 94 big blinds against everybody else behind him. Only had the biggest one was Santos, who had 17.
Yeah, so he's probably opening, ace deuce
so
off,
he could be
ace
opening
3
any
off, ace 4 off, ace 5. I mean, he's opening all of those, right?
Yeah,
he could be
he
opening
may have
anything.
any ace.
Yeah. I think that's probably true.
That's the thing about this spot is his range, Wang Yi's range is so wide in what he's doing here. I mean, you can min open anything at that stack depth, and then he came out with a one big blind bet, C bet.
He did call a check raise, but I guess if you got the ace of clubs, you're probably calling that check raise, right?
Yep.
So I came in late, so I missed all the pre-flop action. But
it was
if
just
that's person's,
it was just a min open and a call from the big blind. And then on the flop, on the monotone.
Would you ever consider though shoving this hand?
Well, we talked about that a little.
Pre-flop. Yeah. Okay. Never mind then.
Well, I mean, would you?
I would, because these players are all better than me, and I want to take variance out of the play.
Fair enough. I mean, that's probably wise. In a Triton, it's probably wise, because this is a killer lineup. Would you do that?
If somebody's opening a lot, then I don't think it's a bad play. Did he have like 15 big blinds to start? Like, what did he have to start?
He had 19 to start, so he was third at the table.
Yeah.
Just resetting the context, there's 17 left in this, so we're already in the money, but we're just at the beginning of the money. So like this is that kind of like the post bubble bonanza, and there's 4.2 million for the winner. So there's a lot to play for here.
Yeah, that makes it a lot different then, I think, when he was third in chips.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. do you want to talk any more about the range of Wang Yi before I show you what he had? Okay, I'll show you what he had. Now let's reverse engineer this. And what do you think of this play as a chip leader in this spot? So we open, we get called, we c-bet small, we get check raised. We've got a club, I guess, which we call the check raise. Goes check check. Then our opponent.
And we have
bets,
position.
Yep.
Position is huge here.
Right.
Yeah.
And then our opponent bets small. Is this the kind of hand that we expect or should be going for it with here? Got a nice club blocker, I guess.
Yeah, because when our opponent bets small here, like that just like screams like it's just a blocker
Yeah.
bet,
Yeah.
right? So we can raise all our bluffs and our value here. This is why I prefer that. I prefer the check to the blocker bet.
Yep.
Yep.
This is actually a better hand than I expected he to have. Because he's got a pair here. I didn't think he even had a pair. But he was still behind every other pair on the board except the deuce.
Right. I mean, he can't think his fours are good at this point.
No.
So like, I think he wisely understood that part of it.
It's surprising that he called the check raise with that.
What was the check raise then, Chris?
What was the check raise?
Yeah, how many big blinds did it? Because it was a one big blind bet, right?
Yeah, so it was like a 3.5.
Yeah,
3.5 big blind raise.
So, I mean, there's this concept of getting, Carlos Welch calls it the Jedi mind tricked into decreasing the size of your check raise to something that they can call. And, almost it seems like given what he had, it seems like if he would have bet bigger, he might have been able to get him to fold that out.
Mm-hmm.
But because he allowed him with enough chips to call, we got to the river with a hand he could turn into a bluff.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is when we check raise this flop and we don't continue on a turn that actually improves our equity, then that gives him free rein to do this.
Right.
Like why didn't we continue on that turn? Like either shove or bet again on the turn.
Mm-hmm. So Kim, you would have, when we get called here and the king comes, you would have, what kind of bet sizing would you take here?
It's an awkward stack size here, but I would probably just shove here.
Mm-hmm.
Because how many kings does he have? Like maybe some kings with the ace of clubs or something.
Yeah, he might have some king of clubs too, right? That might be the scary thing.
Yeah.
Well, keep in mind, this is, if you think about this, you could think about this as like a big blind calling range to an an in position open. They're really wide. They got a lot of stuff. So the percentage of time that they're going to have a made hand is much smaller percentage wise based on the entire range they started with.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say he could have kings, well, yeah, but he could have pocket fours. He could have, he could have anything. He could have Jack 10 here, which, it would have made it straight here, but I'm just saying he could have at almost any two cards.
Well, but wouldn't you say though that the call of the raise, no matter what it is, would change the equity realization curve such that he actually might, that it kind of evens it out, that you end up not necessarily having the range advantage in that point, although you may have the nuts advantage, rather than making it so wide. I mean, you're narrowing his range to some degree, I would think.
Oh yeah, I'm just saying, how many kings does he have?
I think if he had king of clubs or ace of clubs, he's gonna just like shove us in on the flop, to be honest. Like I just don't think that he's just gonna call there on the flop when he has the chip lead. Like I just think that when we decided to check raise this flop, and this king brings in more equity for us, then you just got to close your eyes and go with it.
I like it. Well, he does not, and he ends up folding to this bet, which I thought was. And this is one of these spots where I do think, you know, I think we're in these spots a lot, right? These sort of like, there's like one really commanding chip leader. We're getting down to it. We've made the money. There's like 3 tables left. But there's a bunch of short stacks, and we kind of get one of these hands in the big blind. It's like, I gotta defend it. And then we're like, well, I hit top pair, but it's kind of gross, and it's not that great of a top pair. So maybe I'll do something with it, but then I'm going to go halfway and I'll check the turn and I'll do this blocker bet. And then suddenly you realize that like you're at the bottom of the chip race at the whole table now, you know, or at least tied for it. And so I just thought this was a really interesting spot, and I have done this so many times, and I think that there are maybe some ways to think about how can we avoid these kinds of spots. There's some advocacy in the chat. I think Kim, maybe you advocated for this of like shoving pre. I'm not sure I want to shove this all the time pre, but I can hear that case, and I think that's maybe a valid case, depending how wide this player is. But I would not, even if they flipped over their cards and showed me pocket 4s, I'd be like, oh man, I don't really want to be racing right here.
Yeah, I just don't like the fold after. I don't like the check raise on the flop.
Yeah.
If you're going to fold this hand,
Yeah.
like when you check raise the flop, you just are not folding this hand.
Yeah, I agree that that's the really the deciding moment of this. Like when we call from the big blind and we hit top pair, even though it's a monotone flop, we have the jack of clubs.
We just shut our eyes.
Yeah, and it's like this is about as much as we were sort of hoping. I know we're in an ICM spot. I know they can have ace king or ace queen and king queen. They can have they can have made flushes. They can have, there's some stuff in here that's like not, they can have queens, they can have nines. They have a lot of stuff that beats us. But they are going to be opening so wide that we are also still ahead of a ton in this spot. And so like, yeah, I think we either have to like take the passive route and maybe call that one big blind, or we have to, if we take that more aggressive route, unless that board really, really, really degrades, I think we have to sort of figure out how to go with it, especially with the jack of clubs in our hand. But I don't know. I'm not playing for 4.2 million that often, so what do I know?
Yeah, one part of my reasoning for wanting to rip it in on this flop instead of just making that small check raise was to protect the equity that we have. I mean, this is a hand that needs protection, and in these ICM spots, like we said, Wang's range is so wide. I mean, he could have almost anything, and there's a lot of nasty cards that can come out in the run out, including this king.
Yep.
Another club. Do we really love it? You know, if we make a flush with a jack, you know, we don't have the best flush.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think we needed to protect our equity on the on that flop. You know, if she's got a better hand than us, then we just, you know, we go out at this point. But he's got such a wide range; it's unlikely, very unlikely, that he's got us beat. And
so, do you donk then? Do you donk jam, or do you check jam on the flop?
Yeah, that's a good question, because you know, what if we donk jam, then yeah, he'll fold and we'll pick up the pot anyway, which will be nice. If we check and he jams, or I mean, if we check and he jams, then what do we do? We're probably going with it anyway. We got, you know, when you got 17 big blinds and you flop top pair against a wide range like that, you're going with it anyway.
Well, I know in the games that I play, if you go all in with 17 big blinds in this scenario and somebody has 94 big blinds, they're calling with 3-4. They don't care. They're calling with anything because they could get lucky and beat your queen jack with a pair of threes or a pair of fours if you don't hit. So in the games that I play, I mean, you know, you're probably going to jam this and you're probably going to get called by the guy with 94 big blinds, regardless of what he has. So you have an opportunity to double up.
Yeah, I saw something like that similar last night. The big stack called a jam with something like a dirty diaper or 4-2 or something like that.
Yep.
I also think the presence of the two, you know, again, in the tournaments that I play, sometimes I'm just trying to wait stupid play out, right? That somebody's going to make a really dumb play, and I don't actually have to play these sophisticated lines to win. So, granted, this is a Triton, right? You know, and obviously that's the difference, and we want to understand what the correct play is, but I just be kind of biding my time until I see some sort of terrible play happen, and I get a ladder out of it at the very least. So.
Right. All right. Well,
one other thing, in the small stakes tournaments I play, I would have called pre-flop and I would have donk jammed on the flop as soon as I saw a queen and I had a high club. Let's get it in. It's time to go.
So you wouldn't even allow him to see, you wouldn't even try to capture that C bet.
No, I just jam it in.
I agree with that if you're like a bit lower in chips than we were. I like that move, but when we were like close to 20 big blinds, 18 big blinds, I prefer the check jam after the.
Yeah, I suppose. Either way, the money's going in on the flop.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that makes some sense in this spot, especially I think if we're talking about sort of a $200 tournament, a $500, you know, some sort of tournament like we're playing live, or, you know, some under $100 online tournament, I think that kind of move can make some sense in those spots. But if you're playing it, and that's probably the difference between showing this kind of thing. But I do think it's as interesting, I think, at the level even that we're talking about, the ability to avoid sort of bleeding off half of your stack in this kind of spot is pretty important. Or the ability to at least try not to do that.
And it always happens with a straight or a flush draw. Did you ever notice that? You get aggressive because they always say, you know, you should check raise that big blind when you have, you know, a big draw, because you can get a lot of the bluffs to fold. Well, then in this situation, you're such a chip dog that they don't have any incentive to fold. If they have any part of it at all or any reach of all, they have no incentive to fold. So that's why you have to, like Kim says, check, jam, and be done with it.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for going through that. Any last closing thoughts? Or I think that might be a good one to end us on. All right. Well, I want to thank John, Rob, Keith, Joe, Kim, all for showing up. Thank the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino for sponsoring the show. And thank you to you, the listeners, for tuning in. Couldn't do it without you. You make all the difference in the world. See you next time.
Or you didn't share your sound there, Mr. Jim Reed.
Yeah.